Welcome to Just the Who of Us, hosted by Reah Higgs. This is a space for honest, thoughtful conversations around mental health, life journeys, holistic wellnesses, and the experiences that shape who we are. Take a breath, settle in, and join Reah and today's guests as we explore the stories that connect us.
With us today, we have Dr. Danielle Griffin. Um, Danielle is, and I mean when I say this, like really a woman of many talents and focuses. And I'm really, really excited to have you on here today. You have a lot to offer and a lot to cover. And today is just kind of a small piece of that. So, welcome to Just the Who of Us podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad we were finally able to get together. It took a while, but we're here.
Yeah, end of 2025 was kind of a whirlwind and it's a lot going on going into 26, but I think things are settling.
Right, right. I get it. So I want to take a minute to kind of get to know you a little bit before we jump into our topic of conversation. So if you haven't visited, I'm going to leave the Daniel's website in the description, but check this website out, honestly, because there's so much to offer, just from general wellness to really honing in on our wellness and as individuals and people who are trying to thrive in a world where emotions can be difficult. And we know emotions, our emotions, how we perceive and react and respond, it impacts our body, it impacts our overall well-being. And so Danielle has a lot of different avenues to offer from our inner work to our outer body. So tell me a little bit about who you are.
Yeah. Um, well, I think you hit the nail on the head a little while ago. I used to refer myself to the Jill of all trades instead of the Jack of all trades. I'm the Jill of all trades. But that just came from my need, desire to learn a lot. I'm an educator. Um, I I'm a relator, so I like to be able to share the information that I have, the knowledge that I have, and relate to others, help others. And that's essentially how I got to where I am. I went through a period of time, a couple of years span where I was going through grief. I was busying myself with work, professionally. I have businesses, two kids, a husband, stacking things on top of the other, volunteering for, my son's sports, you name it. I was doing it, teaching, teaching yoga, and just finding myself in this, cycle of stress, this grief that I was ignoring, chronic pain. I was dealing with high blood pressure, back pain, postpartum depression, and ignoring all the things, just trying to continue to push through. But eventually I came to a breaking point. I was losing sleep, continuing to gain weight, not able to control my blood pressure, really wanting to get off of medicine, but, not understanding at that time, like it's your lifestyle, even though you're active, right? Even though you're eating right, all these other things are not going to set you up for success. So once I finally pushed pause, right? And it wasn't until my husband actually pointed it out to me that I needed to, and I realized, like, hey, I've worked really hard to get to where I am, and I shouldn't feel this way. Like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not the lifestyle that I was hoping to be living.
Hmm.
And it was until I had, like, actually had to assess it, like, this, like, truly this isn't the way things how I wanted things to go. But I didn't push pause to realize that I needed to take a step back. And I was able to do some research. I found somatic exercise therapy. I found hypnotherapy as well. And doing those two things saved my life essentially. It allowed me to get better sleep, get control of my blood pressure, um, really understand how my body was feeling, and be able to say no to things because I was physically limited in ways, or even if I wasn't at points where I wasn't physically limited, trying to not continue to push myself or put myself back into positions where I would be. And so, doing kind of the mindset work with the hypnotherapy, understanding like truly what my goals are, where I want to be, how I envisioned my life, where I was going, the direction I was going allowed me to eliminate a lot of things. And then continuing to do the somatic exercise allowed me to heal my body. And so once I got to a point, not necessarily 100%, right? But where I was like, I see a difference. Other people see a difference in me. And that was the big thing. Um, I know this is working. I have to teach others. I have to learn it and I have to be able to share this with others. And that's just my nature, I guess. Like I'm like, there's so many people in my immediate circle, family, friends, who I could help if I learned this, and so many lives that could be touched. And I knew that, especially with the somatic exercise, it's accessible. And that was the main thing. A lot of people that I know are afraid to, not just try something new, but get in the studio, get out of their comfort zone. They might be surrounded by other people or different shapes and sizes, and just we often have a lot of internal, um, negative talk, whether it be true or not, right?
Yeah.
That talks us out of doing certain things, even if it might be helpful. And I've experienced that myself, but I know for other people around me go through that as well. They're afraid to do something outside of their home that's beneficial because like, oh, that's for skinny women or flexible people or, whatever their preconceived notions are. But the somatics isn't that. It doesn't have to be that. And it can be something you do in the comfort of your own home, without feeling judged or, you can
Yeah.
wear whatever you want to wear. You can be in a business suit, you can be in your comfortable workout attire or your pajamas, whatever the case may be. And so all those barriers to heal ourselves are essentially eliminated. The only barrier is the mindset. And like I mentioned, that's where for me that hypnotherapy really came in to break down that barrier. And so that's essentially how I use the two, to help my clients and people in my virtual groups kind of overcome that and start to create a lifestyle, really create the habit, of doing the practice, embodying it, having that awareness, and doing it when they need it and not being afraid to do it when they need it.
You know, you touched on a few really good points, but there's one thing that, whether it comes to going to the gym or even like, because the gym it can be a really big step for some people. And it can be just a small step in a really big change.
Mhm.
And whether it be something, as say, okay, going to the gym is a small step to a big change, or changing how you respond to literally everything around you. It's kind of out of this fear of doing something different that a lot of times holds us back. And or a fear. It could be there's just the fear of the new thing, the fear of being successful at it, the fear of the work that it takes, the fear of judgment, all these things, right? And it starts with a fear. And I used to feel like what everybody always says, oh, your childhood, your trauma, your blah blah blah, and it's whatever. And I had this completely different mindset that I have now after I've actually like obtained this education in how our brain works
Yeah.
and really like started to look inward at myself as well as outward in my life around me.
Mhm.
And all the things, all the kind of seemingly cliche or redundant things that you hear about why a lot of our adult habits were formed, it's true. And it really takes like looking at these things, even if the fear is, oh, you know what, that thing that I thought was stupid, that's actually right. Because that was one for me. Like, oh, hear this trauma, I hear childhood, I hear, all the time. I'm like, no, that's not it. And I kind of had this fear of like, oh, what if it is? Because then I have to rethink everything, right? And I have to do work, and that's scary. Um,
You definitely hitting the nail on the head. It's that fear that limits us, that hold us back. And yeah, sometimes it's a fear out of the trauma, or it's a fear that other people have projected onto us, right?
yeah,
Especially as children, telling us to do certain things or not do certain things, and that's just embedded beliefs that we grow up with, you know, but that was actually somebody else's beliefs, and I may not truly know or understand why I believe this. And so it takes
yeah,
some, inward looking, evaluation. And that was one thing that I was able to start doing. I know that for myself, I often, quick to assume it's other people, like, no, you know,
it can't be me. They
right, I'm
need to
not
change.
the problem. Right. But then it made me realize, like, maybe in some cases I am the problem, like, especially when it came to like my relationship, for example, you know, because, I was going through that grief, I was busying myself and doing all these things. It was causing a strain in the relationship. And I didn't see that over time. you know,
Yeah.
I what maybe not 100% the problem, but yeah, those actions did cause me to be the problem, and so it allowed me to evaluate, you know, where I stood, how I was living my life, and what changes I could make. And it wasn't obviously an overnight thing, but we both started to see the differences in one another and the changes that we were making, our lifestyle, trying to give time back to each other, finding those times to bond. So,
Yeah, I feel like I've been grieving kind of my whole life. Um, and not realizing that how I was processing and responding to that grief impacted so many things.
mhm,
And, I want to clarify too that grief can be over many things. When we think grief, we think death. And
right.
that is the most common form of grief. That's the most commonly understood form of grief. But it can be from job loss, it can be from lifestyle change. Grief can come from so many things. It doesn't have to just be from death. And so if you feel like feel like I'm constantly mourning something. It's constantly impacting my mood, my will to just want to live and do, everyday things. But no one died, and so it can't be grief. It is possible that you are still grieving something. It doesn't have to necessarily just be from a physical person dying. It could be an animal or, it could be, but it doesn't have to just be grief, death. And I think that's something that's kind of important that under people, important that people understand.
Right. I mean, one of the most common forms of grief is like relationship loss, right?
Yeah.
You have close ties with somebody, like you said, they didn't have to necessarily pass away, but that removal of that person from your life um, can be traumatic. And then we also have grief that can happen over time.
Yes.
If you know you're losing somebody or
Hmm.
that distancing and or the change in the relationship and how things are progressing, it may not, you may be grieving the relationship you had with that
Absolutely.
person prior. So knowing that you're either about to lose them or already have. So I know I've gone through that as well, even with my marriage. Fortunately, we still are, but through all that loss and the distancing of the relationship, you kind of had this feeling like we're no longer in a marriage, right? We're just living together, and
Yep. Yeah.
there was that grief that this may not work out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've gone through that with my first husband. I'd expressed that, hey, like this isn't going the way that I wanted it to, right? And I was kind of met with like, oh, it'll be okay. And I was like, but it's not, you know? And
Right.
before we even physically separated, there was this heaviness over the house, just grieving the relationship that, for one, that I thought it was going to be, and the relationship that it was in the beginning. And so you can absolutely, I mean, we ended up getting divorced. But we were young and we also didn't implement the steps that you should take in a relationship, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm remarried now and I'm very happy, but I've been open with my current husband that, I don't think that we took the healthy steps. And that can make a huge, huge difference in the outcome of any relation, romantic, familial, any type of relationship. Taking the healthy steps. And those are most often the hardest steps because when you're mad at someone, you don't want to get into a good place with them in the moment. You just want to be mad and feel your emotions. And
Right.
that's where the unhealthy steps come in of distance and things like that, not working on communication and.
Exactly. And that's why I feel like for me, this practice came at the right time because we weren't taking those healthy steps,
Yeah.
but it allowed me to be able to have those conversations because I was starting to understand a little bit better how I was feeling, being able to communicate those things. Um, and also, like I was saying before, recognizing that sometimes I was the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took that internal reflection of, what are these things that are triggering me? Um, how did I get here? Um, what are my make or breaks? If
Hmm.
if these things that are causing issues for me are not a make or break, then maybe it's really my mentality and how I view it. And maybe I can adjust my mentality. Maybe him and I can meet somewhere in the middle. And that's actually worked out a lot. We still attended therapy, granted, this wasn't 100%,
Yeah.
just me doing internal work. So I want people to recognize that. I definitely think therapy is one of those important steps that people
Yes. I
to take,
agree.
especially in a relationship. Um, but when outside of therapy, right, I had to do work for myself, and this was the work I did for myself.
Accountability is huge, and both people have to take accountability. And this is one reason that therapy is important because you have this outside person who is not on either of your sides individually, right? Like their goal is to assist you together. But in doing things together, we have to take accountability and be willing to work on things individually. Um, it's I've gone through different types of relationships, and my current marriage is my most stable romantic relationship. And we have to work on ourselves individually to be strong as a unit. And that's a whole nother conversation that we could have. But whether it be your parental relationships, your familial, your romantic, your sexual, whatever the case may be, if we are not working on us individually, we can't be a part of a solid partnership. You can't be a stable part of an unstable relationship.
Exactly.
And it starts with working through things like grief. And it's such a grief is such a complex focus because of all the things that you could be grieving. You could be grieving multiple things at once. And I've gone through in the past 3 years, um, relationship loss, familial relationship loss, and death, and financial loss all simultaneously.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even until in the last couple years that I acknowledged, like, oh, what is shaking me so badly, so forcefully is grief, and so, because we focus on, okay, well, how can I make more money? How can I make more friends? How can I make this? And what we're not focusing on is the actual internal thing that we're going through. I can't create more if I'm not even understanding of what I already have or
Right.
what I'm losing. What was my part? What wasn't my part?
Right.
How can I process? How am I processing this? Like, am I processing this?
I think we're so quick to want to fill the holes, want to fill
Yeah.
the void, right? That we hadn't fully understand the impact on our
Hmm.
lives before we fill it. And one thing I was telling somebody else, especially when it comes to relationships, you might have that person in your life say, it was somebody that passed away, and you have another person that connected you, whether it was a family or a friend, maybe, like a mutual connection. And when you remove that person that was the mutual connection, your relationship with the other people change.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like
Yeah.
oftentimes that was the glue, right? The holding things together, the the way you connected. And once that person is gone, sometimes it's okay to sever ties. You don't have to hold on to that memory and try to recreate the past, because it's going to be different. And it's
Yes.
okay to take a step back. If, like, was that even a healthy relationship? Do I want to continue? How do I really feel about this person? What direction am I moving in now? And are they bringing positivity to my life? Are they supportive? Are they, all the things? Are they bringing value, into
Yeah.
going forward? And how much do I want to engage with this person, if at all? You might have engaged with these other people on a daily basis before, and now it might be once a month or never. And, you know, that's okay. But I think one thing we haven't talked about a lot in the past is, which has been an increasing conversation lately, is, just it's okay to not talk to people anymore. And like cutting people off. We're like, oh well, that's my mom, or that's my uncle, or you know it doesn't necessarily have to be so, abrupt, or, we don't have to be rude about it, or, we're creating boundaries, and
Mm-hmm.
we're creating the lives we want to live. And if that, like I said, if that person isn't bringing the positivity or the support or moving in the direction you're moving in, then it may not have been a healthy relationship anyways. And we
Absolutely.
also have to recognize that we can't force other people to change.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually maybe they'll see what you've done or where you're going, and maybe they'll have a change of heart, and maybe eventually you can reconnect because you both have grown, right? Growth happens over time, but you can't force somebody to grow. And um, we just have to hope that both parties will be better off in the end. So
Yeah.
I think that's been an increasing conversation that people are having, something they're considering more, just having a better understanding of what that means for them. Sometimes it could just be, hey, we had a mutual friend, we went out occasionally together, and now we just don't go out anymore, and that's fine. But sometimes it might be a closer, immediate family member, and those are usually the ones that are harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Throughout my adult life, I have never been one to hesitate to end relationships, no matter how close we are, no matter if we're connected by blood. It's one thing that I taught my children because I didn't know for a very long time that I don't have to have people in my life just because they're related to me, and neither do you. I've yeah, I've done it aggressively and I've done it carefully. And doing it aggressively wasn't the healthiest way, obviously, because I'm angry about it, I'm talking about it,
Right.
but I've also done it in a way that I'm explaining to my children, and they're like, hey, we support you and we understand, and we're glad you finally saw that about that person because we've been telling you, my children, my teenagers, my husband, and it's like, oh, but I've done things, it's also my own personal growth. Years ago, 10 years ago, I would have just been aggressive and mad and upset and cut that person off and made it obvious. But now we can be in the same room and we just go on about our day, and it is what it is. And I don't have to be angry and loud and upset about it. Things happen. I'm not allowing it into my life. And that's that. And then we just move on. And it's benefited my children, obviously, to do things that way also, because then I'm teaching them you don't have to carry around hate in your heart. You don't have to be angry and aggressive about things. Relationships end. And as long as you did your part, and as long as your reason is to protect yourself and, the people around you, that's okay. And you're right, it is an increasing conversation. And I'm glad that it is because we can avoid being harmed by people who we used to be told we had to allow to harm us.
Right.
And I'm so glad that that's not the case anymore.
Right.
Um, Yeah, but I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about somatic work and how this helps you move through grief in a healthier and more successful manner too.
Yeah. I I feel that because I was able to start building that internal awareness, a lot of the somatics, kind of taking a step back, is body awareness, but it's using the breath work, meditation, and movement to understand how you're feeling mentally, emotionally, physically, and being able to use the breath work, the meditation movement to help heal us. And so oftentimes when we are going through grief situations, in this example, we carry that emotion in our body, not just feeling the pain in our heart from the grief, right? But actually, it physically manifests in chronic back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, you name it, right? It,
Yeah.
it might be a little bit different for everybody. If you're angry and stressed about it, that high blood pressure and other chronic diseases might still start kicking in. If you're a stress eater, maybe you have diabetes that you're trying to manage, and just being able to have that awareness and understand I'm feeling that stress, I'm feeling the pain. It's these emotions that are starting to creep in on me.
Yeah.
How can what can I do physically to cause a shift in how I feel without having to, you know, binge eat or, like I'm not going to
Yeah.
drown myself in right now in our house. Our favorite snack is Shackalicious, the gummies. Like I'm not going to eat 10 packs of Shackalicious or or whatever the case may be, or, I'm not going to um, rely on these pain medications, or I don't need to use as much pain medications because I'm understanding the source of the pain and discomfort. And I can use this movement to, like I said, cause that shift, relieve some of the tension, the stress, the pain,
Hmm.
allow me to get some better rest, or allow me my mind and body an actual opportunity to rest and reset, reduce my cortisol levels. And over time, you start to feel that lift, that weight come off of you. And so doing the work, a little bit at a time, reminding yourself to not ignore it. You're starting to to feel those pains creep in. That I think that's the biggest thing. Like once we have that awareness, your body's like, I need this. It felt
Yes.
really good when you did it, and I need it, and please don't stop doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're gonna want to keep doing it, and then you're gonna feel like when you don't do it, how your body responds. And I think that's when people start to really notice, like, yeah, it was acknowledged that it felt good when I did it, but oh, I don't have time to do it. And so they stop, but then they start feeling how they've, actually recognizing the differences in how they,
Yeah.
I think that's been a huge thing, like having that, okay, I felt pain, but not all pain is the same. I felt discomfort. I felt like radiating heat or whatever. And I might feel some discomfort as I start to release, but that's definitely not the same as when I'm not letting it go.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, when we just start to make that shift, giving our bodies what it ultimately needs, um, that's when really the change starts to happen.
Yeah. You know, you make a lot of good points. I don't have time to touch on all of them, so I have to be selective. But, this was me with the gym. When I'm consistent in the gym, and I mean go in and like intentionally exercise, I feel so good. I I feel like people notice that I feel better.
Yeah,
My husband, because any big inconvenience in my life, I stop going to the gym and I start overeating. That's been my pattern for forever. And he'll even point out, you feel better when you go. And I do. I love it. I've been a Planet Fitness member for 20 years, probably since they opened, honestly, in different cities. But I do. I feel better when I'm consistent with that thing because it changes other things in my life. It changes my other focuses, right? And it gives me something to be consistent at, and being consistent gives me confidence.
yeah,
Um, but I'm also very consistent at being inconsistent with that. But the thing, whether it be overeating, whether it be pain pills, alcohol, social media, whatever the addiction may be, because they are all addictions, whatever the addiction may be, you are constantly feeding it. And when you break away from it, it hurts because your body is like, give me that back. But once you shift to a healthier alternative, your body is going to begin to say, hey, keep giving me that, just
Right.
like it did the unhealthy thing. And then you're doing something right when you feel better not doing the addictive thing.
Right. Yeah. I think the body even starts to respond. Like if you reintroduce the addictive thing, you start to feel it like
Yeah.
this isn't
Yeah.
I thought this is what I wanted, but it's just really not what I wanted.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's
It-
really where, where I've helped a lot of people where the hypnotherapy kind of steps in to break some of those patterns, right? And create the new healthy patterns because of where they see themselves with the life they want to live and, truly wanting that healthy, happy life.
Right.
And it's when you know for yourself, you've told yourself, had the conversation of what you truly want and the life you want to live, and understanding that the unhealthy way is, destructive in many ways.
Yes.
um, that's when the reset can happen.
Yeah. And I want to have a maybe a later conversation about hypnotherapy because it's something that I've become really interested in. Um, Especially like for overeating because so many things just haven't worked. I used to smoke cigarettes and I tried for about a year to quit and then one day I was just like, nope, I'm done. And I haven't smoked since. So when it comes to other thing, I'm like, why can't I just do that? You know, like, and then there's the inconsistency factor. So, it was, and not just overeating, but like sleep, which has been a not so much best friend to me. Not such a I've started taking sleep medication also to help with anxiety about 4 years ago. And this year I've started weaning myself off of it and I've been sleeping. Like I went from, the high dose I was on to cut that in half and then cut that in half. And I'm sleeping. And I'm like,
Right.
every day that I sleep, when I have taken a lower dose, I'm like, oh my God, I slept. So, it's my brain is like, I need that. I need that to sleep.
Yeah.
The medication served its purpose 4 years ago, right? Maybe in the last couple years, it served its purpose for that time. And now that purpose is not there anymore. I've learned a lot in those 4 years.
Right.
And so it's just time. And medication it's beneficial sometimes. It is beneficial for certain things. But it's one of those things that, it's not meant for most of it's not meant for long term.
Right.
Most of it is to help treat a symptom until you can change what you need to change within your body to regulate that symptom. And so, it's, but I saw something about hypnotherapy locally here, and I was like, oh, I want to learn more about that. Maybe it could help me with, you know, the addiction component because the food addiction, these things, they are addictions. And so, it's just like grief when you kind of pinpoint, oh, this is the thing that's in my way, not the superficial things that I thought it was. This deep thing, that's the thing that's in my way. Then you really can start to heal from it
Yeah.
and navigate those symptoms in a healthy way.
Right. Yeah. To your point on the sleep medication, I think for many people, like you said, it serves a purpose for that period, but it's we create patterns for ourselves, and we naturally know how to sleep, but we also train ourselves how not to sleep.
Yeah.
So we have to untrain ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that sleep medication helps in that regard to help with the retraining of what our body needs, how to get a restful night's sleep, creating healthy sleep patterns for ourselves, a
Hmm.
healthy sleep environment, all the things that go into it. And it, like you did, eventually the goal is to wean ourselves on it because our body understands this is a safe space. This is a place I can rest. This is time to rest.
Hmm.
These are sleep hours, right? We're
Right. Yeah.
resting, recovering, resetting my hormone levels, all the things happen during this time, and your body starts to realize, like, oh, I need this. I like this. I should be doing this on a consistent, regular basis. I need this much time for this to happen.
Hmm.
And I said, once you've kind of retrained your body, it starts to naturally happen again.
Yes.
We just have to work to make sure we don't put ourselves back into those patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like any other habit or addiction, you know.
Right. Exactly.
Um, it takes time, 30 days at minimum to build a healthier habit, to stop your old habit. You know, it took me a year to quit smoking of actively trying. So like it takes time and it takes a purpose, you know. And that purpose has to be beneficial to yourself, you know, and it can be indirectly beneficial to the people around you, but it really has to start with us. And I know, you know, because that's a difficult thing for caregivers, moms, people taking care of their parents, you know, whatever the case may be. We want to benefit everyone around us, you know, and I just want to kind of fit into that it has to be the change that you're making for yourself. And that does benefit other people if that's important to you, but we can't benefit other people unless we are healthy first.
Right. Exactly. And that's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, is there anything else that you would like to say or ask or anything before we wrap up?
Um, like you mentioned early, I encourage people to check out my website. I have a new online shop where I've created resources and wellness tools for people that are on this journey, to support them on their journey, um, and meet people where they're at. I'm all about, accessibility and, trying to give people what they need for when they need it. And so that's kind of how I built my website and my shop, offering people a variety of resources and services to support them and meet them where they're at.
Yeah, and I checked the shop out. Check it out. She's got a lot of really good stuff too. So,
Thank you.
um, you're welcome. All right. Well, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope that we can have more conversations in the future.
Yes, definitely. We'll dive deeper next time on the hypnotherapy.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for spending this time with us on Just the Who of Us. We hope today's conversation offered reflection, comfort, or a moment of clarity. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with someone who may need it. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you're not alone in the journey.